Good morning, and welcome to the third annual Henry County Women's Empowerment Summit. How fitting is it that this summit also falls on Women's History Month? You are women that lead organizations, run businesses, inspire and nurture many that sometimes go unnoticed. We notice your power, we notice your strength, and we thank you for it. Today, you will hear from some of the most powerful women that are leading and inspiring just like you. The story shared today, I hope, will resonate with you so that you can pass it on to other peers and mentees that look up to you. Don't keep this knowledge to yourself. So right now I want to leave you with one quote from Oprah Winfrey, and that is, step out of the history that is holding you back. Step into the new story that you are willing to create. So be blessed and have an amazing conference. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. We are so excited to have you joining us today. This past year has been all about new normals. Ugh, that's a term I'm so sick of hearing. But so it's only fitting that in this world of new normals, we had a man open up today's Women's Conference. Thank you, Lincoln, for all your support for the Women's Empowerment Summit and everything that you do for the Henry County Chamber. So speaking of new norms, I've experienced some changes this past year. Have you? I want to hear from you. In the chat box, chat it out today when you experience something or you connect with something that represents a change in your life. Like this past year, I've experienced WFH. It took me a minute to catch on to what that is. Work from home. So I've got a photo that's going to pop up. See that? That's me working from home, Heritage Bank, and the t-shirt they sent that says #BetterTogether. Now, something else that I've experienced this year that maybe you're like me, and if so, I want to hear you chat it out, is staycation. If you're like me, you canceled a vacation. And so I have a photo of me and my husband in the backyard bonfire roasting peeps. That's right, if you haven't tried roasting peeps, those decadent little chicks, then you've got to try it this Easter. Another change you may have made this past year is you may be added to your family in the form of a puppy. Check out my new puppy. Yep, that's my new blow-up dog, Tally. It's one of those special hybrids that doesn't shed. So in this world of new norms, I want to hear from you today, ladies. As you're connecting with our speakers, I want you to chat in that box. Stay engaged, because throughout today's event, you're going to see me pop in every now and then. And when you do, there just might be something a little bit different on me. And if you're the first one to notice, I want you to chat directly to me, Dodie Kaysen. And when you chat directly to me and you identify that one thing that's changed on me, there's a $100 gift card headed your way. Now, you can only win one time. I know, but you've got to pay attention and stay focused today, ladies. Enjoy the show. Sit back, relax. Today's theme is listen, learn, and grow, the power of resilience. So we've got something coming your way. At this time, I'm going to turn the program over to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Laura Turner, their representative. We are so excited to have them back for the third year as our title sponsor for our Women's Empowerment Summit.
My name is Crystal Perkins. I've been an athlete all my life and involved in numerous sports, but I'm also a pediatric orthopedic surgeon at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. As I was entering med school, I had an injury and I couldn't run for a period of time. So I decided, well, if I can't run, I'm going to bike and swim. If I'm going to train, and do those things, I wanted to be able to compete. And so I signed up for my first triathlon at that point. That was the first year of med school, and so now 11 years later, I race probably anywhere between 6 and 10 events a year. Teenagers want to have a connection to the person they're seeing. And so if your first interaction with a teenage athlete is to say, you just need to stop running, they've shut you out at that point. They're not listening to anything else you say. And so I think if you can connect with them and understand that, then you can really build some rapport with them, and then they are truly willing to follow your advice going forward. So I think where you take your child or teen really matters a lot. And the reason for that is you want to take your child or teenager to the place that has the greatest expertise in their injury that they have, as well as is on the cutting edge of the appropriate treatment and rehabilitation of those injuries.
Hi, I'm Laura Turner with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We are so excited to be back for our third year as presenting sponsor of the Women's Empowerment Summit. Today, I'm honored to welcome our opening keynote speaker, Vanessa Harrison, president of AT&T Georgia. To kick off our program, we'll hear from this amazing woman and how she began her career as a telephone operator, working her way through the ranks of the company to become a senior level executive. She credits her accomplishments to her determination and a host of individuals that helped her along the way. In her current position, she works closely with state and local policymakers, business and community leaders to foster an environment that welcomes investment and innovation, focuses on bringing new technologies that drive innovation and create jobs, and provides educational and economic opportunities that empower the quality of life for all Georgians. Turn off the noise around you and tune in as we hear about Ms. Harrison's inspiring climb to the top. Welcome, Vanessa Harrison.
Thank you, Laura, for that warm introduction. And good morning, Henry County Chamber's Women's Summit. What a beautiful sight to behold. A virtual room full of powerful, beautiful, dynamic, strong women. It is truly an honor to be here in this virtual room among so many inspiring women. To Barbara and the leadership that are the visionaries behind this summit, thank you. It is always important for us to pause, reflect, and most importantly, listen, learn, and grow. When I first received the invitation to address you this morning, I can honestly admit that I paused, not because I didn't want to be here, but because I knew that this moment in our nation is one of great importance, change, and uncertainty. I paused because I knew that I would be speaking to an audience of women who have likely seen much triumph and also experienced grief in the past year. That I would be addressing an audience with some members who may be experiencing personal change or professional change, as so many are, as a result of the seismic shift that our world has experienced. As I sit here today, it's not lost upon me that the past year has been one of reckoning. Our communities continue to grapple with the lingering impact of systemic racism and injustices, while many continue to face the harsh realities of the global pandemic that has taken far too many lives and impacted millions of businesses. But in the past year, we've also witnessed great hope and triumph with groundbreaking medical technology created to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, communities coming together in unity to speak out against hatred, and a historic election of America's first Black female vice president. It is safe to say that the past year has both challenged us and inspired us, both pushed us and pulled us. But even in the face of the most daunting adversity, I've learned that much like a caterpillar going through its transition to a butterfly, that it is when the most difficult and challenging times that we find out just how resilient we really are. I firmly believe that each of us are ultimately on a great journey in life, a path, a process, one that will teach us new things, remind us of old traditions, a journey that will force us to grow, call upon us to ask hard questions, challenge us to act, and ultimately mold us into the women that we are destined to become. Do you agree? This journey can be daunting, scary, confusing, and then daunting all over again. But the journey and the experience along the way are important as they create the foundation and essence of who we are and how we evolve. I will share a bit about my path and journey now. I was born in Raleigh, North Carolina, and raised there. And anyone from North Carolina would let you know that we do things a little bit different. We move a little slower. We love our Sunday dinners, and we like to have a good time. But growing up in North Carolina taught me that the value of the more simple, beautiful things in life, and it instilled in me the importance of loyalty, persistence, and balance. I was raised in what many refer to as low-income housing by a hardworking single mother of 10. My mother raised us with strong work ethic and taught us at an early age the importance of walking in our truth and never allowing anyone to define us with their own interpretation of who they thought we were. When people would refer to us as at-risk kids, my mother would tell us that that meant we were at risk of doing amazing things in life. This is a key value that my brother and sisters still all hold dear in our hearts today. And as life would have it, my path would take me on a journey that would defy expectations of many and introduce me to people to my life that would allow me to stand before you today as one of few Black women senior executives in our country. Okay, I began my career as an operator for AT&T, which was the lowest paying job in the company at the time, primarily filled by women of color. And I was indeed the telephone operator. Nothing fancy, but the job is what I needed at the time. I took that job decades ago because I had aspirations to move to Atlanta, Georgia, and I needed a job that would help me transition there. The next 30 years after my operator career marked a powerful transformation and progression, ultimately bringing you and me together today. Determined to literally climb the corporate ladder, I worked my way up through network operations, often finding myself to be the only woman and the only woman of color in the room. It was not always easy because I was climbing the ladder while raising a family and continuing my education. But I was determined, much like my mother taught me, to defy the odds. I continued on many assignments and training paths until I reached the office of president of AT&T North Carolina. And now I proudly stand before you as the president of AT&T Georgia. Whoever would have thought this young lady from the low-income housing projects in North Carolina would make it this far? It has taken me more than 30 years to get here, and it has not always been easy. I've had ups and I've had downs and many failures and many setbacks. But nevertheless, I always knew that I had no other choice than to persist. Quitting just was not an option. Often throughout my life and career, I was underestimated simply because of where I came from, what I looked like, or my job title. I am a firm believer that talent is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. Let's say that again. Talent is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. I, like so many women and many of you in this room, have always had what it took to succeed. I just simply needed the opportunity. Along my journey, opportunities and experiences that came with them have shaped and taught me invaluable lessons. I want to share a few of those lessons with you today. 1, respect yourself and others. One of the most important lessons that I have learned is the importance of respect to what is different. People of different races, different cultures, different ethnicities, and different faiths. and also the respect of different ideas and approaches and ways of doing things. The most successful companies attribute their success not to having the smartest ideas and best practices or business plans, but having a diverse set of people around the table that brought forth different ideas and perspective. There is power in embracing what is different. Number 2, you don't have to compromise to be recognized. I want you to take a moment and think about this. You don't have to compromise to be recognized. In today's society, we are often concerned about being the best. And sadly, sometimes we strive to be the best no matter what the cost or consequences. But just as important as getting to the top is how you get there. You don't have to dim someone else's light just so that your light can shine. Again, you don't have to dim someone else's light just so your light can shine. Number 3, lift as you climb. Unfortunately, it has become clear to me throughout my own progression that I see less and less people that look like me in the rooms and spaces that I have been afforded to find myself in. I am determined to keep trudging along so that I can shake things up and change that. We must always ensure that as we grow, we are helping others to grow. That when we walk through doors, we help widen those doors to allow for more women to walk through them. That we live the most sacred of ideals, lift as we climb. Again, lift as we climb. Number 4, remember that things happened before you got here. Before you got to this moment in life, before you were even born, someone was helping pave the path for you. Your parents, your loved ones, and even people who you have never met. Someone fought for you to have an opportunity to be in this room today. It is important to respect their legacy and work. We all stand on the shoulders of others that came before us. Learn from their lessons and carry their work and vision forward. Number 5, always walk in your truth and do not doubt yourself. People will tell you that you are nuts, that what you are trying to attempt to do is impossible, that you can't do it. Don't listen. Imagine if you would have listened to those who told me, if I had listened to those who told me that it was impossible for a telephone operator to become the president of AT&T Georgia, I wouldn't be where I am today. So always walk in your truth and do not doubt yourself. 6, when you fall, and we all fall, it's simple. Get back up. Get back up. Sometimes the universe will set you back to set you up for an extraordinary success. Ben Franklin and even Oprah had failures, but often failures are simply the universe pulling you into the direction that you are destined to walk. 7, always remember that you are powerful. No matter where you started, no matter how you started, you are powerful. We all have a journey to walk and an impact to make. Don't judge or allow yourself to be judged. We all may take a different path on the journey, but we can all reach the destination of success. But we must never forget our power and our ability to blossom where we are planted. And number 8, enjoy the journey and trust the process. Life is a journey, a process. It's important to relax, embrace all that comes before you, and remember to enjoy the journey even when it gets bumpy. As I close today, I want to reflect on your journey to this moment and the path that you will continue to walk. I implore each of you to ask yourselves, what role might I play? What is it that I want to see differently in our communities, in our lives, in our companies, and ultimately in our world? Ask yourself, what would I do if I knew that I would not fail? Now close your eyes and envision your best self. Life is like a piano. The music, your story, depends on how you play the notes. So let's move forward in unity and with collective vision and determination to carry on the legacy of great women before us by dedicating ourselves to the improvement in our communities, embracing a passion for excellence, having the courage to stand up and boldly take our rightful place in building the world as we desire. May you seize every opportunity along your most important journey. Keep shining, keep moving, keep building, and trust the process. Thank you for inviting me and thank you for listening, everyone. I'd be delighted to take questions, and Shanna Thornton is joining us to get us started.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, Ms. Harrison, what a amazing presentation. Very inspirational and motivational. As she said, I am Shana Thornton, and so excited to be with you on this wonderful morning. Of course, you are watching and witnessing the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit, and it's going to be a day full of so much information and inspirational messages. Like she mentioned, we are taking your questions, okay? So you can put those right there in the chat, and we will get those and certainly give those to this very amazing and accomplished and inspiring woman. I've got a question for you to kick it off, Ms. Harrison. What is the typical day like in the life of the AT&T Georgia president? And it comes with a lot of responsibilities, I would imagine.
Yes, it does. The day is very busy, I can say, even though we are in a virtual environment. I usually begin my day by reading a spiritual, inspirational message. And that's how I start each of my days. And then I reflect back on the day before, and then I look at my calendar, and then I hit the ground running. I usually have a check-in period with one of my team members to make sure that, everything is still as we set the calendar. And it usually involves, lots of Zoom calls, Zoom meetings, lots of phone calls, and just interacting. I said to someone the other day, I feel like I interact with people more in a virtual environment than I did when we didn't have the pandemic. So that's basically how my day is going. I'm checking emails and checking things. We work in a very political environment, so that's part of our responsibilities. So we're constantly checking to make sure that nothing is, no laws or ordinances or any type of public policy is impacting our company negatively.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like you have a very full day that keeps you very, very busy. The next question, when it comes to decision making, right, which requires so much, of course, especially during the turbulent times of the pandemic and other times, what is your process?
So, that's a very interesting question. Normally, I'm a big collaborator. I like to explore the ideas and perspective of others. So I normally reach out to my team, get their perspective, get their thoughts, and then I'll make the final decision. But I always try to make sure that we're working in an inclusive environment. And inclusive means also their thoughts and in the decision-making process. So that's normally how I make my decisions.
I see. Very, very wise. Sounds methodical as well, and including people. Let's focus on the P word of people, right? And listening to your presentation, you had a lot of things in there about believing in yourself and working well with others. How important is it, in your role professionally and personally, to really keep people top of mind?
Well, I believe that a leader is only as strong as the people that they work with. And so it's very important to me to keep my people motivated, to reward and recognize them for their efforts, remind them that we are a team. If one fail, we all fail. So I don't want anyone working in an environment where they have the fear of failure, because failure will happen. Yeah. But just remember that you've got a tribe here, that if you fall, we're going to all help you get back up.
Yeah, so powerful. I think so many times people will often hesitate in taking risks because of the fear of failure. And you're so right. I mean, but everyone will fail at some point, but have that village and that support system. I do want to encourage everyone that's watching us today. We have a large crowd and we thank you so much. Get your questions in, get your concerns in. You have the opportunity to ask a leading company president anything you want regarding her career and any pointers that she's taken along the way. This is your opportunity, okay? So if you would type those in, let us know. We're going to get those over to Ms. Vanessa Harrison right now. You talked about challenges and failures. Also in your presentation, you mentioned there were some cold nights. There were things that happened that really pushed you to the limit. Can you share with us some of the greatest challenges you faced in your climb to the executive suite, and how did you respond?
Yeah, there was many. One I'll share with you that always comes to mind is that it was very hard to, I would say challenging, to become recognized as the leader of the organization or the company. So many times I would go to meetings and I would have my counterparts or members of my team, white males, with me, because remember, I started my career mostly after operator services in network operations, which was predominantly white males. And so people would often refer to me as the assistant or the secretary to some of the other leaders, some of my direct reports. They just didn't envision me being the leader. And, I struggled with that for a while because I was like, is it something that I'm doing? Is it how but it wasn't, it was their problem. It was that they did not have that mindset. They couldn't envision a Black female running this operation.
Wow.
So that was always an interesting, and I was very fortunate to work with some very strong white men that would say to them, you don't ask me that question, ask her, she's the leader.
Wow.
And they would be like, oh.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the other challenges I would say is just always, wondering, am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Am I strong enough? Am I doing the right thing? It wasn't always success. There were failures too. And then you beat yourself up, well, if I had done it another way, would it have been different? Or if I had done, but, I had to learn early in life that you blossom wherever you're planted, because we don't get to choose our garden. And so if we're planted in a particular garden, you blossom there because it's not forever. It's not permanent. You're going to be transitioned somewhere else.
Yeah, so true. We have a comment and feedback from Miss Matthews on the chat, and she says she's very much enjoying what you are speaking of. And can you expound a little on how important it is to reach back and help others? Because you're a trailblazer, you're a pioneer in so many ways. And how important was it for you to mentor and guide other professionals that were younger and not as experienced as you were?
In preparing my message, two of the most important things that I put in that message that resonates with me and is near and dear to my heart is one, lift as you climb. Okay. There's room for a lot of us at the top. So you got to lift as you climb. And I was always very intentional about that. I would always lift women. When I first took a job in Charlotte, North Carolina, it was over a business repair center, where people called in troubles all the time. So, it was nothing positive with customers calling in, but the results weren't good there. And I looked at my leadership team and it was all men, but the workers were predominantly women. So the first thing that I did was I integrated that team, and I had almost 50% women, 50% men, and the results soared. People want to work with people that look like them. And so lift and climb is very important to me. The other thing about it is when you walk through the door, make sure that door is wide enough so other women can come with you.
Beautiful.
It doesn't just always have to be women, because other men are definitely, worthy of that.
Mm.
But we know that women often get overlooked. And there's so many so many men out there that's standing, to support us, that's got our back. Sisters, they have our back. They really have our back. And so we have to salute them too. But make sure that that door is wide enough for others to come through with you.
So key, wide enough so others can come through as well, and we can continue to produce wonderful leaders such as you, Ms. Harrison. We have a great question from our live chat. Ms. June Wood says, can you really expand on the family and work and self-care balance? What tips do you recommend for working women? That's a timely question.
That is a timely question, because I never mastered it. I either did too much of one and not enough of the other. I wish my 21-year-old self knew that don't take life so serious. Don't take work so serious. If you don't take those things so serious, you can find a little bit of balance in it. Unfortunately, I didn't learn that till much, much later in life. And so often I sweat the small stuff. And I had to, go through a lot of ups and downs, setbacks to really learn that. The thing that I would say, though, is you got to always keep, and this is what works for me.
Okay.
I can't say what works for someone else, but this is what works for me. When I truly keep my faith, my family, and my work in that order, I tend to be able to find a little bit of balance there that I can make things happen. And when those things get out of order, that's when I find that there's a lot of, discord there.
And I would imagine sometimes that's requiring a check-in, right, Ms. Harrison, that we have to say maybe we're a little out of balance. So we have a point where we need to be truthful with ourselves.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Which often can be challenging for others as well. But when it comes to others, speaking of family and friends, how important is it to check in with them about how engaged we are? Because, as a busy working professional woman, there can be lots of things that pull you, and we don't necessarily recognize we are not as balanced in some areas as we would like.
So, that's a very good question as well. I try to surround myself with people that, one, will check me and say, hey, you've been working so much, I haven't seen you, haven't heard from you. That's a sign that I need to slow it down some. And, but vice versa. I find myself sometimes feeling like, gosh, I haven't heard from Jane Doe in a while. I really need that laughter, or I really need the words of encouragement. Oh, I need to check in and make sure everything is going good. And sometimes, it could be 3 months before we've talked to each other, and we talk to each other and it's just as if we've spoken the day before. Those are the kind of people that you want in your tribe. You can't have people that, expect to hear from you every day, because that's just not practical. Yeah. But when you do talk, you've got things of substance to talk about. You make each other laugh. That's part of the problem. We don't laugh enough. And so we make each other laugh. That's how I do it with other people. And if I haven't heard from them, then I'm checking in, like, what's going on? Tell me what's going on in your life.
Wow. We're getting some great nuggets of wisdom from the one and only AT&T Georgia President, Ms. Vanessa Harrison. You are watching and experiencing the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. Such an enlightening experience so far, Ms. Harrison. Thank you for all of the information. We are going to try to get through all of your questions and comments, because so much is coming in, positive feedback on what you are speaking about. Ms. Burke says, as a seasoned woman in education looking at what's next, not retirement, what advice would you give for choosing or kicking off another career?
Oh, I love that question. Too often we stay in a job and then we feel like that's all we can do. And I always try to have a 3 to 5 year timeline on myself. Every 3 to 5 years, I'm looking at, okay, what have I been doing? What am I going to do next? How am I going to get there? And so when we get to become seasoned employees, sometimes we feel like, well, I'm a little bit older now and I've been doing this so long. I'm comfortable here. We become content. You should not become content. Life is full of great opportunities. And, if you're not ready to retire, then look for the next opportunity, but make sure it's something that you enjoy. I always say, you never take a job just for the money, because you can be some very unhappy people. Look for something that you will enjoy. And then, as I said earlier in my speech, believe in yourself. You're powerful. You're powerful. You can do all things. So step out there on faith and do it.
Yeah, just do it. Certainly, try your best to put away the doubts and the fears and execute it, no matter what
That's
point.
right.
I love that. And what a great question. Thank you so much. Miss Rosa has a great question for you, Miss Harrison. She wants to know, can you share some of the tools used to help you grow, books or types of mentor that you sought throughout your career?
Yes, I, unfortunately, I wasn't an avid reader. So it had to be things that I was really interested in. And I would read a lot of things about leadership, a lot of materials and books about leadership. And basically, I would read it to check myself to see, am I doing things right? Or what do I need to change? That type thing. And then, but I learned most of what I learned from other people, from people being willing to pour into me their wisdom. And I always listen. I'm a great listener when it comes to learning. And so I surrounded myself with people that, one, found joy in teaching me and helping me learn. That's how I learned. I didn't go to school to learn any of what I'm doing. I learned it from other people. And that's why it's so important for me to give back, because I know what other people deposited in me.
Such a great, great point. That leads us to the next question, bringing up the word of flexibility, being flexible. And you just said yourself out of your own mouth that you didn't necessarily go to school to be doing any of what you learned along your professional path. How important it is for professional women to be agile, if you will, or flexible. And I'm not necessarily saying be able to be flexible to go to New York, to Atlanta, to Miami, but even mentally, right? Because, so many times when they characterize type A personalities, they have they have this agenda, they have this calendar that's set, but being being a very successful leader in the business industry, things don't always go as planned. But how key was it for you to really adapt and be flexible in your learning and also with the different leadership styles you encountered?
Oh, it's very important to be flexible because, the thing we got to remember, we don't control anything. We don't even control the air we breathe. And so everything that happens, it happens for a reason, and our destiny has already been defined. And so that is why I always say blossom wherever you plant it. There was times when I wanted a particular job because I thought I was the best fit for it. I could do it better than anybody else. And, it was just my job. And I didn't get that job. And I was devastated, because in my mind, in my agenda, that was the next step for my progression. But what I had to learn was that everything is not for everybody. And so the person that got the job was the best person for the job. But I didn't give up. I continued to do what I was doing, and I was going to be the best at it. And I have a very competitive spirit. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. And I want to do it my best. And so I continued to do that. And 6 months later, I got a better job that I was much more happier with because I learned to blossom where I was planted, but I had to be flexible. I couldn't dig my heels in and say, well, I didn't get that job. Or I didn't get that particular opportunity. So I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to just do just enough to get by. I couldn't take that attitude. You can never take that attitude because it doesn't work for you.
No, it doesn't. And following up with that is a timely question that we have in front of us. What advice would you give a working professional woman whose career has been stalled or derailed because of the pandemic? And you just spoke about not always getting the promotions you went for, but you stayed the course. Right now, you know, COVID-19 has been something like anything those are living right now have ever seen. What advice or tips would you give that woman so desperately wanting to get back on track, but due to circumstances of COVID, she got derailed?
Start rebuilding your network. Start rebuilding your network. And this is the perfect time to do it because, you know, most people got some time that they can do exploratory Zoom calls with you.
Okay.
But start building your network of people that are in areas that you're interested in. And, you know, it's very important to have a network of people that support you, and it's one thing to have people that support you, but it's another thing to have people that will advocate for you.
Wow.
And to do that, you need to have a strong network. And you can't discount anyone because you'd be surprised the voice that's going to be at the table. And, you know, we hear a lot of people talk about being at the table. You know, I want to be at the table. I want to be able to be at the table and make decisions. Well, all of us can't be at the table. And don't worry about that. Guess what? The ones that are at the table, make sure you network with them so they can be a voice for you at the table. Mm-hmm. I did that my entire career. You know, I made sure that I knew who was at the table so that I could utilize their voice at the table for my own good.
And that's being engaged and checking in with the team members you're around. And
yes.
That's key, which
yes.
goes. This has been such a great experience and conversation with you. Thank you to everyone with all of your questions. We have one last question for you, and it's a very important one. Do you have any parting words or final words of wisdom for the women watching us right now who prioritize attending the Women's Empowerment Summit? You know, they showed up because they've got goals, they have vision. Many of them are already accomplished and have so much more to achieve.
Parting words that I would give is the words that I had in the speech that you just heard me give. Keep shining, keep moving, do what you know you can do, trust the process, but more so, have faith in yourself.
Have faith in yourself, trust the process. And this is coming from the words of the mouth of a woman who's achieved all of that and so much more. Ms. Vanessa Harrison, we look forward to seeing what else you have in the future to accomplish. You are such a role model and such a trailblazer for so many that have witnessed your story. Continue to shine on everything that you do. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We would also like to acknowledge AT&T as a sponsor of the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. Right now, ladies and gentlemen watching us, take a moment to experience a special presentation from the sponsor, AT&T.
2 words in any language hold the power to change a life. I am. I am shapes identity, destiny, and direction. Strong. For an individual, this can define. For a group, it can start a movement. It's been a long time coming. Among women, I am can describe a range of identities. And over the span of decades, the possibilities of I am for women have grown to include STEM roles, technical positions, and fields where women were once underrepresented.
Come lean on me, gonna lean on you, gonna power up and power through, gonna rise strong. Come lean on me, gonna lean on you, gonna power up and power through, gonna rise strong, gonna rise strong.
In this new era, let's recognize what a woman can be and our role in making it happen.
Strong.
From leading global technology operations to creating stories that bring diversity of experiences and perspectives to life, get ready to be inspired and empowered. More importantly, be prepared to ask yourself, how can I create a world that embraces the woman who says boldly, I am? Because together, as one,
I am a CEO.
Keep it coming.
I am an engineering executive.
Gonna power up and power through, gonna rise strong.
I am a disaster recovery specialist.
Gonna be around and you'll be we do just fine.
I am an esports general manager.
Strong,
I am a sports media GM.
gonna own up, never gonna see these arms thrown up,
Yo soy CFO.
gonna rise. Strong,
We believe. We believe.
We believe.
We believe.
We believe.
We believe.
We believe in the power of I am.
gonna rise. Strong.
To learn more about AT&T, subscribe to this channel, visit the AT&T newsroom, or watch more videos in the playlist seen here.
Wow, I feel so empowered after hearing from Miss Vanessa Harrison. And Shayna Thornton, if you're not familiar with her, she is a writer and an award-winning talk show personality and just an all-around awesome woman. Now this time I'm going to turn the program over to Keena Caesar. She is with Ameris Bank, and Ameris is a fantastic bank not only in our community but throughout the state of Georgia and Florida, and so they are one of our sponsors today, and we are so thankful to have them here with us at the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit.
We didn't become bankers so that we could tell you no. We chose this profession because we knew we could make a difference. That's one thing all Ameris bankers have in common: a determination to get you what you need when you need it. That doesn't mean we cut corners, but we do cut red tape and long lines and slow answers to open doors for you. Help you sign on the dotted line. Get you settled for the long term. Partner with you to make strides and break ground. We have nothing against tradition, unless it gets in the way. And at Ameris Bank, we're not here to get in the way. We're here to get you what you need to get you where you're going. Welcome to a new banking tradition. This is Ameris Bank.
Hello, I'm Keena Caesar, Vice President and Branch Manager for Ameris Bank. We're so happy to be a sponsor for this year's program. I'm so proud to say that our next guest speaker is a bit of a hometown hero. She is an internal medicine physician who works solely in the inpatient setting as a hospitalist at Piedmont Henry Hospital. In her pre-COVID life, she enjoyed traveling, but still manages to squeeze in a little time for her fur baby nibbles. Our mid-morning speaker is Dr. Ivory Drayton. Dr. Drayton radiates positivity and beauty, so no one would ever know the tough road she's traveled down. Pull out your tissues and prepare to be inspired by her strength and resilience. Welcome, Dr. Ivory Drayton.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Ivory Drayton. I am a hospitalist at Piedmont Healthcare, and I was asked to come and tell my story. I understand that this is a conference about resilience, and when I was asked to give this speech, I was not very sure if I had interesting enough story, but some people tend to think so. So this is where my story begins. My story actually begins before I was born with my mother, who was abandoned as a child. She was part of a foster care who mentally abused, physically as well as sexually abused her. She did end up getting taken out of that situation into another family that actually was not abusive and showed her lots of love. But unfortunately, when you don't get the help that you need to become an adult, those things spill over into other parts of your life. So she had me when she was about 18 years old. and in New York City. She actually married my dad about a year later, and I moved to South Carolina. In elementary school, I remember my mother being very responsible, took very good care of me, and we were pretty much joined at the hip. As I got a little older, let's say elementary school age, I never wanted to be separated from her. She was the only person I wanted to be with. Dad was the disciplinarian, so I was always attached to my mother. But things started to change along with as I grew up in age in elementary school. So my mother would take me everywhere with her. However, I never actually stayed with her. There are several instances I remember being dropped off at her friend's house that I may have never met before, never heard of before. Sometimes there were children there, sometimes there were not. There were several instances where there were older boys there that I was unfamiliar with. There would be days that I went where I didn't take baths. My dad didn't know where I was. Many of the places were filthy, roach infested, and I wouldn't eat. I'd open a box of cereal and roaches would crawl out. I'd open a cabinet and roaches would crawl out. So after several days of not knowing where my mother was, I didn't know, her friends didn't know, there was no way to get in touch with her. Attempts were made to call my father to try to find me so that he could pick me up and bring me home. This went on for several years. I'd go out with my mom, she'd leave me somewhere, and I'd be there for days not knowing where Dad was and when I was going to go home. There were several times where I was left in the company of older boys who took it upon themselves to take advantage of a little girl whose mom wasn't coming home anytime soon. To me, this was kind of part of life. This is kind of how I lived, and it was normal to me. I didn't like it, but it was normal. There were instances where I was dropped off at a babysitter, and I didn't like this babysitter. I was familiar with her, but I didn't like her. My mom would drop me off and I would cry. I'd throw a temper tantrum. And when mom left, I'd get beaten, thrown in a bathroom, locked in, and then they would drive off and go wherever until I fell asleep. And then they came back and let me out when my parents came back to pick me up. And the reason that I was beaten, locked in the bathroom was because I cried. But I cried because she beat me and locked me in the bathroom. So fast forward to middle school, because this was very consistent throughout elementary school. By the time I got to 5th grade, there was no more going off with mom. I was quite old enough to know that I did not want to be in that situation, so I stayed home by myself a lot. So my father was at work, I was home alone, and no one really knew where my mom was or when she was coming back home. So a lot of the responsibilities of the house were on me. I learned to cook at an early age. I learned to do laundry at an early age. I learned to clean at an early age. And my dad expected me to clean like a mother or wife would. So these are things I had to learn very early growing up. Middle school, I still was able to maintain my grades. I was a very disruptive child. I got a lot of letters sent home of talks too much in class, kind of your classic ADHD kid. Very smart though. I never had any issues with maintaining my schoolwork. But when I went home, I never wanted to go home. It was always a struggle knowing that when I got home, everything that I would have to do when I get there, on top of the homework that I had to do. Fortunately, homework was the easiest part of my day. Stealing started when I was in middle school. I was always very frugal. I kept every dollar that I ever got. I used to get a $3 a week allowance, and I would stick it in a Pringles can and try to save up all my money because I wanted to buy a Barbie or whatever it is that kids buy. And I would come home and the money would be gone. And I would ask my dad, hey, Dad, where's the money? Ask my mom when I saw her, where's the money? Oh, she needed it. She'll pay me back. Needless to say, I never got paid any of this money back, but this went on for several years. So when I was in middle school, I was coming into my own. I was starting to know who I was and actually started to have a lot of resentment towards my mother. I'm 12, 13 years old now, and I realized that this woman isn't really the best mother that I envision a mother should be. Nonetheless, I still have my grandmother and I still have my father. So I did not have complete abandonment, but everything went through my grandmother. Everything I needed went through my grandmother when it came to mothering. She was barely around in middle school. No one really knew who she was or what she looked like. People really knew my father and they really knew my grandmother. It got to a point where I really didn't want her around. There was nothing that I could have on my own that would not get stolen and pawned for money at some point. So my dad stopped buying me things at my request so that I would not have things continue to be stolen from me. I remember one of the most heartbreaking things for me as a child is I had a very large Barbie dream house and all kind of Barbies in it. And one day I came home and it was gone. Now, granted, I'm 12 years old and, maybe I shouldn't be still playing with Barbies, but I was maintaining my innocence and I loved my Barbies and I loved my dollhouse. And I came home one day and it was gone. And I said, where's my dollhouse? And she told me, you didn't need it anymore. You're too old for dolls. I sold it. What do you say to that? Story of my life. Come home, something's missing. Of course, we know who took it. We know who sold it. By the time I got through 8th grade, which is the end of middle school, we did have a graduation. I specifically asked her not to come. I asked my dad not to bring her, but of course, I didn't have a say-so in the matter. I maintained through middle school straight A's with a couple of B's in between. Because at this point in my life, I decided that the only way I was going to be able to get away from her was to go to college. Most people are going to college with a dream of doing something and they want to do this and they want to do that. But my idea of college was going to live in a dorm. And I'm 12 years old, 13 years old. And I just know that I have to get out away from this woman is how I took it. My grades never suffered, which is one of the things that I am fortunate to say that I was always very studious and a very hard worker. And the more I suffered at home, the harder I worked at school because I knew it was my only ticket out. I didn't play basketball. I didn't play football. I didn't have any kind of athleticism that was going to get me a scholarship to college. I knew we didn't have any money to pay for college. And so the only thing I had was schoolwork. So high school. So we get to high school and now I am a young adult and I know exactly what's going on. And some of you by now, if not all of you, know that this is a classic example of a drug addict that lives in your home. So my mother was definitely addicted to drugs. That's why she would leave for several days. That's why she wouldn't come back. That's why she dropped me off at places just to get me out of the way, because nothing's more important than your next hit when you are a drug addict. Not even your family, not your husband, not your child. So we get through high school. And now I am dating, now I have friends, but I'm learning that I cannot have friends over to my home. I'm coming home and I'm finding random men in the house. To keep it in perspective, my parents are still married, but when dad's not home, somebody else is. I am finding drug paraphernalia in the couches. I am still having to be the wife and mother of the house. I have to come home, have to do my homework, and I have to do laundry, and I need to cook, and I need to clean. But now I need a job. It seems that everything that my dad did, he claimed was, well, we need to stay together for the family. My thought was, we are not a family. This woman is not my family. Why don't you get divorced and let's move on? I know that it sounds very odd for a child to actually request that their parents get divorced, but I was mature enough to know that this was not an optimal situation and this is not what I considered to be family. And I begged my dad on multiple occasions, let's just please leave and get away from her. So as a freshman in high school, I was about 14 years old and I got my first job at a senior citizen assisted living community in the cafeteria. And at this time, I was actually getting a check because I knew that I would need things. I knew that I would want shoes. I knew that I would want clothes. I'm coming into myself. I'm in puberty. I'm caring about how I look. But I know that my dad spent a lot of his money and efforts getting my mother out of multiple legal issues that she was having, but nothing actually seemed to stick. She got in a lot of trouble, but it seems that my father would always get her out. So I started to feel like I had to fend for myself because all resources were going to her. So my dad has encouraged me to open up a savings account as well as a checking account so that I can learn how to save, how to spend, how to write checks. I never really spent my money, never really wrote any checks. I just wanted to save because I knew that at some point I was going to want something. Well, one day I did want something and I was just at the grocery store and I was going to write a check for the first time because my dad told me I needed to learn how to write a check. So I was writing a check for the first time and this check got flagged. There was something wrong. It was declined. And I didn't know why. I was not very familiar with not having the money in your account. So shortly after that grocery store incident where my check was declined, my father actually got a phone call asking about me and stating that there was incident of check fraud that they were investigating. So long story short, my mother had stolen my checks, not my checkbook, but took some out of the middle to write checks. She was going to the grocery store buying large amount of groceries, but none of this food was coming to our house. I'm not quite sure where it was going, but there was, they had her on video camera, but they were calling me, asking me about it, not really knowing that I was a 14-year-old kid. And pretty much they asked me if we were going to press charges, and I said yes. But I'm not quite sure what happened with my father because I never heard about this incident again, and this woman was still living in my house and not in jail. As the years progressed, me and her had a very strained relationship. Not only did we engage in verbal altercations, but physical as well. And not that I'm proud to say this, but I had no problem kicking this woman if she got in my way. This was my daily life. School, homework, work, come home, laundry, or cook something depending on what time I got off of work. So I had a very adult, responsibility heavy life in high school. It was difficult for me to join after school activities, although I know I needed these things because I'm still thinking in my head, the only way I'm going to get out of this house is if I go to college. I have to maintain my grades. I have to maintain my grades. There was embarrassing story where I am with her for some reason. I'm sure it's not by choice. And we're riding in the car and we're in this neighborhood. And I'm not very comfortable with this neighborhood. Not that I live in the best one at this time, but this is really sketchy. So she's driving and I see someone that I recognize standing on the side of the street. Actually, somebody I went to school with. He looks at me and I look at him, and my mother actually stops in front of him. And they have an exchange. And then I look at him, he looks at me, and my mother drives off. And I'm thinking in my head, how does she know him? Like, why does he know my mother? And as we're driving off, everything starts to click. I know what this guy is doing. I know his habits in school and outside of school. So if my mother's involved, I'm sure it has something to do with drugs. But now I have to go to school and face this guy. I have to go to school and look at him thinking that he's going to tell the whole school, oh, you know, I serve her mom. Her mom's a crackhead. That was very terrifying for me because I did not know what I was going to walk into. Fortunately, he was very discreet with his work and nothing ever came of it. But we would always exchange glances. And one day he walked up to me and said, "Don't worry, I understand." So that was very difficult for me growing up. There was also an incident with her where I got very depressed and my dad thought that getting me a puppy would be helpful. So, you know, let's add some more responsibility. And I love this puppy. I love dogs. This puppy was great. I came home, I took care of this puppy. I did everything. And after about a month, I came home and puppy was gone. Where's the dog? You don't need a dog, I sold it. What do you say? Story of my life. So the saga continues. Throughout high school, I am even more self-conscious about what's going on at home. There are times where when I come home and there's a man home, I don't know what to do. Do I leave? Do I stay? Many times I just left and went to a friend's house because I was not familiar with this man. There was an incident where I had a boyfriend in high school and he worked at the photo center and I loved taking pictures. I was addicted to capturing happy memories, things that I could look back at and say, oh, I remember this was great, as opposed to the nightmare that I was living at home. And I remember going to pick up my pictures one day and I had a nice big note on the front that said, "No nude pictures, please." okay, listen, I'm very young. I've not crossed that threshold of nude pictures. So I'm very confused. So I have the film strips and I'm looking at the film strips, like what nude pictures are they talking about? And surprise, surprise, you're looking up at the film and you see a big vagina staring you in the face. Multiple pictures and all kinds of everything. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be the nail in the coffin because this is not for my dad. So I go and I tell Dad, you got to see this, because I've already told him about the men. I've already told him about the drug paraphernalia. I've told him everything, but this is a classic example of a codependent person. And my dad was the true definition of codependency and used me as an excuse to stay in this situation. So I did. I passed off those films to him. He thanked me for it, said he would handle it. And just like the check situation, I never heard about it again and nothing ever seemed to come up from it. In addition to the physical altercations that I would have with my mom, my parents would also started having physical altercations more along the lines of weaponry. So now we introduce knives into the situation where I had to dodge knives being thrown by my mother. I had to dodge dishes and everything. I just knew when the argument started that I needed to steer clear. The police were at my house often. And again, I don't have friends over. There's nobody coming over to my dysfunctional household. And it's very difficult when your friends are like, oh, let's go over to your house. And you're like, oh no, let's just go over to your house. And I remember just seeing all of my friends, and granted, no family is perfect and no household is 100% stable. Some are worse than others, but I just remember seeing my friends in this idealistic family life that they had. They had the house, they had the dog, they had the parents, and everything seemed functional. And I was very jealous. I just wanted a normal life. I wanted to come home and not know if a knife is going to be thrown. I want to come home not knowing if there's going to be a crack pipe in the couch cushion. I just want to come home and be normal. I want to come home and do my homework and talk on the phone and watch TV like a normal person. My dad started to buy me things again in order to keep me entertained. PlayStation, Sega Genesis. But for what? All of them got pawned. All of them were stolen. So because of that, he ended up buying me a safe. And I had a safe in my room, which is another thing you really don't want to explain to your friends, why you have a safe in your room. And when he would buy me things, this is where I would put what I deemed valuable. It might have not had any monetary value, but to me it was important. So the safe was one of the best gifts my dad ever got me because I could put gifts inside of this gift to protect them. But I would come home and find that there were screwdriver or some kind of blunt object that has been trying to get into the safe. And, you know, based on this discussion so far, we all know who was trying to do that. High school for me, the physical place of high school was actually my refuge. I really never wanted to come home, which is probably why I worked and went to school and went out with my friends as often as I could. Never really wanted to stay home. I got through high school, I got accepted to college, and at this point I'm thinking, man, I think I want to be a doctor. I've always thought that I wanted to be a doctor, but now that I'm heading into college, I'm trying to come up with a plan. I've done my work, I've gotten through school, I have very good grades, I'm doing programs wherever I can, and now I'm in college. Now I'm able to leave. Now all this hard work has paid off. And I remember packing up the car and my dad driving me to my dorm and he's helping me and we're giving each other our hugs. And I say, I love you, Daddy, but you'll never see me again until this woman is gone. And he looks at me surprised, but not really surprised. And he says, okay. And I said, I know you think I'm just talking, but I'm being very serious. You will never see me again unless you drive to college or she leaves. So after about a semester, maybe over a semester, when he realized that I would not come home, I wasn't coming home for any holidays. I wasn't coming home for anything. He would never see me. So one day Dad told me, me and your mother are getting a divorce. We're finally gonna go our separate ways and she's moved out so you can come home now. So I'm like, yes, best news ever. So I go home. And everything seems to be on the up and up. There's no her. I don't really see her stuff around. Everything seems pretty good. About 48 hours later, I hear click, click at the door. Look who comes walking in. It's her. And I ask, what are you doing here? She says, I live here. What are you doing here? And that turned into not only a verbal altercation, but also a physical altercation at that. So again, I packed up everything and I left. And again, very upset at my father for lying to me, but understandably, he wanted to see me. The turning point, and it is the best news and the worst news at the same time, but it was, for me, the best thing that I had heard in the last 10 years. My boyfriend at the time called me and said, hey, and he lived at home and I was in another city in college. He called me and said, hey, your mom's in the paper. And I'm like, oh God, what did she do this time? And he says, I thought it was you, because I'm told we look alike. He said, I thought it was you, but when I looked and I noticed it was your mother, she's been arrested for manslaughter. And I'm like, okay. So like she killed somebody? And he's like, she's in the paper for manslaughter. Looks just like you, so don't be surprised if somebody questions whether or not it's you. So it took a minute for it to digest. And I'm calling my dad and I'm like, what's the deal with her and being in this paper and this manslaughter? Well, he didn't really want to talk to me about it. And I ended up eventually asking her, and she's like, oh, it's just a misunderstanding and everything. Okay. Once I heard the story about how it happened, it was very disheartening for me to know that somebody lost their life because of my mom. And I remember maybe a month before being in the car with her and saying, what is that smell? Something smells dead. And she's like, oh, I hit a deer. I'm like, is that this like stuff on the side of the car? She's like, yeah, I just need to clean the car. I hit a deer. And that was probably about a month or so before I heard this story. And everything started coming together. And the reason why I say it's the best news I heard, not because someone lost their life, because that's the very tragic part of this, but it was the only thing that got her locked away. She has been serving a 25+ year sentence in prison. I don't really have a relationship with her by my choice. I don't hate her. I don't really have any feelings towards her at all. You move through your stages of grief and then you come to acceptance and then you move on with your life. I think that it's unfortunate that she had to be put away in order for my suffering and my dad's suffering to come to an end, but it's definitely something that needed to happen for her. I've prayed for the unknown family that lost their loved one at the hands of my mom, and it's not something that I broadcast to the world. Most people don't even know that I have a mother because it's always dad, dad, dad. Once she was gone permanently out of the home, my dad's health improved. Life overall got better. He is now remarried to a normal functioning lady that I get along with. I have a little sister who was growing up in a normally functioning household. And it just seems that out of a tragedy, a whole family got to heal and got to move forward. And I tell this story because to me, this was just my life. I never thought it was very interesting. I never thought that it was anything worth telling people. I just, have a murderer for a mother. And, who wants to go around saying, oh, yeah, my mom's in prison. She killed a lady. But it is one of those things where everything that I had to go through is put me where I am right now. I had to learn that just because something bad happens doesn't mean that your life has to stop. It doesn't mean that you can't keep pursuing. Every time something happened, every time there was a crack pipe in the couch, every time there was a man in my home, there was another place for me to go. I would ask to go to the library, the public library. I spent a lot of time there. everything that I did to get away from my home, I used that time trying to get to my ultimate goal, which was getting out the house and getting to college. And I don't know how many of you out there share a similar experience. Maybe you've had worse experiences, maybe not so much, but if there's somebody that is going through a lot at home, having unfair responsibilities placed on you, there is a way to shift your focus and get through it. I found that I had a praying grandmother and I wasn't completely left alone. I could turn to her, but she was grandmother. She wasn't my mother. And I just knew that I had a goal. Get out the house. How do you get out the house? You have to study. You have to make good grades. You have to get out of here by any means necessary. Whatever your goal is and whatever it is that you want to accomplish, no matter how small or no matter how minuscule the steps are to get it, it's possible, and you shouldn't let someone else stop you from achieving what you want. You're the only person that can stop you. If I didn't have the drive and the motivation and the resilience to get out of the house that she gave me. She gave me that drive and motivation to say, hey, I have got to have something better in life than what I have now. That is how I got to where I am. I didn't have money. There were no checks written for me. I had to work my way through school. I had to take out student loans. I had to pay for my own graduation. I had to pay for many things. My dad wasn't able to help me financially until I was actually in medical school, and he would help me with groceries. Everything else was on me, and that was just kind of my normal life. So I just want to say that no matter your destination or what your end goal is, you might not have a straight path to that success. There are many roads that can lead you to the same destination. I myself had to take several back roads in order to get to where I am, but it doesn't matter how you get there. As long as you have a plan and a will and the motivation to get there, you will overcome whatever obstacle comes your way and you will be successful. Thank you.
Welcome back, ladies. Hope you had a good quick break. We're moving into one of the most powerful segments of the day. This is going to be the opportunity for you to interact with other ladies just like you. I feel like it's so powerful when we're able to connect and hear what other women are going through and the experience that they're actually having. So this session is just for you. So make sure that you turn your camera on and you get ready to interact. Now, these breakout sessions are sponsored by Georgia Power, and we're so thankful to have them back to our event again this year. So you're going to see a quick commercial break from Georgia Power, and then to move into the breakout session, you're going to need to look into your chat box and click on the link to enter into your breakout session room. So have a great time and get ready to listen, learn, and grow in the power of resilience from one another.
At Georgia Power, our customers are at the center of everything we do. We're investing in technology to increase the resiliency of our power grid, expanding our infrastructure to shorten outage and repair time, and providing a cleaner, more diverse fuel mix with solar and nuclear energy. We're working hard to keep energy at a cost 15% below the national average, while maintaining the highest levels of customer service and satisfaction. With reliable energy, the future is in your hands.
Good morning. I'm Joseph Henning, and it is my honor to serve as President and CEO for the Henry County Chamber of Commerce. While this annual event traditionally serves well in person for connections and growth, we appreciate you joining us virtually this year. The theme of resilience and perseverance today definitely serves us all well. I want to extend my appreciation to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Laura Turner for their continued support of the Women's Empowerment Summit. Also, I would like to thank American Family Insurance, Crystal Sanchez, and the Henry County Chamber Education Foundation for their support of this year's scholarship program. following the presentation of scholarships. Please stay tuned for the rest of today's program featuring Dr. Jen Welter. Now, if you'll join me in welcoming our Vice Chair of Education and Government, Dr. Murray Williams, and our Education Attainment Committee Chair, Alethea Barnes, for the announcement of this year's scholarship recipients.
Hello, I am Alethea Barnes. As a retired engineer, educator, and ambassador for the Henry County Chamber of Commerce, I am honored to serve as the chair for the Chamber's 2021 Education Attainment Committee. Our committee works to cultivate partnerships with Henry County educational institutions to strengthen education attainment and workforce development. For the third consecutive year, this committee has also supported the Chamber's Education Foundation in awarding 2 $500 scholarships for young women in Henry County. The scholarship is awarded to 2 students who are in their junior or senior year attending high school, be it public, private, or homeschooled in Henry County. This year, we were proud to see candidates from 11 of Henry County high schools apply for the scholarships, and I must say they were all very accomplished and deserving. Competing in the categories of academic achievement, extracurricular activities, work experience, and an essay about their goals, Jordan Sine Tucker, a senior scholar and athlete attending Strong Rock Christian School, was named one of the recipients of our 2 2021 scholarships for young women. Please join me in congratulating Jordan for her outstanding accomplishments as she talks about her plans and future goals. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Jordan Sine Tucker.
My name is Jordan Tucker. I go to school at Strong Rock Christian School down in Lucas Grove, and I'm graduating this spring, 2021. One of the things I learned from my school is being a servant leader, so not just in my community, but also abroad. And so here in Henry County, I've done trash cleanups, and I've also helped with packing goods for the homeless, but also outside in the Dominican Republic, we provided the villagers with food and water filters so they can have clean water. So I plan on attending Howard University up in DC. What pulled me to that college is one, it's out of state. I wanted to get a new experience, and it's also in the city. At my school, we have to do a college search project, and when I was researching all my schools, I found myself being pulled towards Howard a lot, just because of their traditions and where it's set, and just the overall vibe I got from the students I talked to and the missions that I communicated with. I also enjoy their marching bands. I would be happy to participate in that. And I plan on majoring in nutritional sciences. I decided to go into medicine during my 10th grade year after I went on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic and seeing the conditions that the people were living in and how their illnesses were often left untreated, and they didn't have the means for transportation, much less the treatment that they would have needed to receive. Since I'm majoring in nutritional sciences, I plan on taking what I learned from there and developing it into a more holistic approach compared to the Western medicine that we have here today. Because I believe that what you put on the inside does reflect on the outside.
Good morning. I am Dr. Murray Williams, Vice President of Adult Education and Academic Support at Southern Crescent Technical College in the Henry County Center in McDonough, Georgia. As a member of the Henry County Chamber of Commerce, 2021 Board of Directors Executive Committee, I am honored to serve as Vice Chair of the Government and Education Division, which supports two of the Chamber's core areas of focus in its mission to support development and promotion of Henry County businesses. Having worked with the Chamber's Education Attainment Committee on the two 2021 scholarships for young women, I can truly say that Henry County is gifted with many young female academic scholars who, at the cusp of adulthood, are currently contributing to the advancement of our county and to the good of our society. The students who applied for the Henry County Chamber Scholarship for Young Women are involved in the community, volunteering to help others. Some are even working 2 jobs to help their families while maintaining and achieving high academic honors. They are shining examples of young women who demonstrate the power of resilience and who will go on to become leaders and role models for others who will follow them. I applaud all the young women who applied for this year's scholarship. Now, on behalf of the Henry County Chamber of Commerce and the Education Foundation, I am proud to introduce one of the 2 recipients of the 2021 Scholarship for Young Women, an outstanding scholar and athlete who attends Ola High School. Please join me in welcoming to the program Miss Ashley Morgan Biggs.
My name is Ashley Biggs, and I go to Ola High School, and I will graduate May 19th of 2021. I just started working at Shane's last year, and I still work there. It's my favorite job. I absolutely love the people that I work with, and I love seeing all my customers that are regular. And then I work at Tsunami Volleyball Club, and I'm an assistant coach there. I found myself wanting to coach when I was playing because I wasn't satisfied with the coaching that I was receiving. And I was really interested in it. And I now work with my original coach at a club that I played with, and it's my favorite thing ever. I love coaching my girls. I'm very interested in psychology, especially applied psychology to like behaviorisms for how you spend your money. I'm also very interested in biomedical engineering, which is a far leap from psychology. I've always found it interesting. I am waiting on the University of Georgia's decision, but if I do not get into there, then I will be attending Georgia College and State University. And I don't plan to play collegiate sports, but I would like to participate in intramural sports and club sports in college. And I also plan to continue my coaching career.
So we just had a great opportunity to hear about 2 young women awarded 2 scholarships. And when we talk about empowering young women, that's exactly what Southern Crescent Technical College is doing. And Southern Crescent Technical College is our keynote sponsor today. And so we're so thankful for their support. Up next, you're going to hear from Dr. Jen Welter, our keynote speaker of the day. We have been so excited and waiting to hear from her. And then at the end, you're going to have the opportunity to chat her up and ask some questions during the question and answer segment with Shayna Thornton. So sit back and get ready to hear this powerful woman's story.
Jump directly into your future with Southern Crescent Technical College. Southern Crescent Technical College offers hundreds of programs to prepare students for the real world. From business to healthcare to professional and technical services, our graduates go straight into a career. And tuition, surprisingly affordable. At Southern Crescent Technical College, you will succeed sooner. Apply today at sctech.edu.
Hello, I am Alvetta Peterman Thomas, President of Southern Crescent Technical College, with 5 locations serving Spalding, Upson, Butts, Jasper, Fayette, Pike, Lamar, and Henry counties. Currently offering over 200 programs of study in the areas of allied health, business, computers, film technology, public safety, professional services, and technical and industrial training, Southern Crescent Technical College takes immense pride in preparing today's students for tomorrow's workforce. From short certificate programs to diploma programs to associate degree programs, the college offers students the state-of-the-art training needed to make a successful and swift transition into the workforce and help stimulate the economic growth and development of our local communities. Adult education and continuing education opportunities are also available to provide appropriate training to students at every level. Today, we are delighted to introduce our headlining keynote speaker. We've already heard from women that have grown in their careers because they worked hard and overcame obstacles. We have shared with one another our own personal secrets to dealing with stress, anxiety, and dysfunction. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Have success in your personal and professional life? Well, I'm not quite sure what it took to catapult Dr. Jen Welter into the NFL. Yes, that is the National Football League. For those of you multitasking right now, you heard it right. Dr. Jen Welter was the first female coach in the NFL. In 2015, she served as a linebackers coach for the Arizona Cardinals. As if that's not enough, she also became the first woman to play running back in a men's professional football league with the Texas Revolution. Her curio closet doesn't hold teapots and precious moments figurines, but it does include 4 world championships from her 14-year career in women's professional football, 8 all-star selections, 2 Team USA gold medals, and induction into the first class of Women's Football Hall of Fame. Now, join me. Put your thumbs and your smiley emojis in the chat box and help me to welcome Dr. Jen Welter.
Well, hello, everyone. Congratulations to the students on your awards. I know what it takes to get there, and I know what it means to have a boost from those people who believe in you. And the good people here certainly do believe in you. So you are not only surrounded by a village, but part of the village. And I think that's something that makes it very, very powerful, because hearing your big dreams, clearly that village has invested in the right women, because you are obviously going to be giving back for a very long time. I love the topic of today. really on the power of resilience and what it means in changing the world, right? Which is hopefully what many of us think. It was funny when we first discussed this topic, I had to laugh and I was like, really? Resilience? Is that what we're talking about? Because it means so much to me. I even wrote a kid's book about it. Because being a woman taking a non-traditional path, it's one where, it doesn't follow the normal goal setting model. And as a PhD in psychology, I've taught classes on goal setting, right? Start with the big goal and work backwards and, create moments along the way that build on each other so that you get to that highest place. But that hasn't worked in so many parts of my own journey. Sure, it did with getting a PhD, but when you're doing something that has never been done, it's very difficult to start with the end game and work backwards. And so for me, I remember one time, and I was actually teaching a class in goal setting, and I had to stop and think, but why doesn't that fit in my own life? And I want to take you back to when I was a young girl and I was practicing my autograph. And my mom walked upstairs. She said, "Jenny, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, Mom, I'm practicing my autograph." And she said, "Well, why? What do you need an autograph for?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to be famous, Mom." And she said, "Oh, that's great. What are you going to be famous in?" And I said, "Well, I'm not quite sure yet. It's either as an actress or an athlete." And I don't think I really understood just how much I meant by that, because though I've been one of the toughest athletes in the world, a lot of the times, part of that was acting like I knew what was coming next or what was I doing, because there had to be a little bit of fake it till you make it along the way. I became a tennis player first. I think I gravitated towards tennis because it was the one sport where I could see women playing on TV. And I always thought they were everything a woman should be. They were beautiful and powerful and strong. And they were out there playing their game on their, by their rules and competing with everything that they had. And I was a young tennis player. At the highest point, I was ranked about 50 in the state of Florida. And then I went to this next level coach, this person who was supposed to, transform my game, take me to the next level, make me that person. And he said, because of my size and my build, I would never be strong enough to play pro tennis. Now, full disclosure, though, I've done some big things. They do not come in a very big package. I am all of 5'2", and I had not yet at that time reached my top height of 5'2". So this tiny little kid who didn't have a lot of muscles, but had a lot of hustle, kind of became a little bit heartbroken. And the person who fought to be on the court every day started finding other things to play, other things to do. But I did start lifting weights because I didn't want anybody to ever tell me ever again that I could never be strong enough. But I found my place in team sports because in tennis, you had to have all the answers. You were the start, the finish, the serve, the volley, the everything. And as a small kid, I may not have had all of the answers, but what I found in team sports is that I could be a really great part of every equation. And I really excelled in team sports, not only because of what I contributed, but how I contributed and how I came to the field every day and just, kind of wanted everybody around me to be great and have a great time doing it. So I found my place in team sports, but I did not yet find my way to my field of dreams because I loved football from an early age. I remember going and watching the sport, right? And thinking that the players looked like real life superheroes. They were larger than life to me, and I wanted to be one. And yet, it was also the first place in the world that somebody told me that boys were allowed to do things that girls weren't. And so I didn't get to play football at that time. And it was kind of like I had a crush from afar, right? Like I had this love of this game and I always hoped it would notice me back. But it wasn't time for that. Not yet, anyway. I went to college and I found rugby, and that was full circle to me. It was like soccer meets football, and I finally got to tackle. And I didn't get the pads and the helmet yet, but I certainly got as good as you possibly could at literally tackling everyone and everything. I learned that even at 5'2", there was no one I couldn't tackle. And I was so good at it that I actually got recruited for the under 23 national team. And yet I, yet again, got so close. And they said, but you're too small. I literally got the feedback at that point that I was by far the best prop there. There were people on the opposing teams who were, terrified of me. But at this level, they could teach someone else to do what I did. They could not double my size. So despite the fact that I had dominated the competition, despite the reputation I had, despite all the muscle and all the hustle, they still couldn't take me because they could teach someone else to do what I did, but they could not double my size. So this has become a recurring theme in my life. Too little for tennis, too little for the national team in rugby. And at some point you start thinking maybe you were just too little in this world, right? Maybe I just didn't have enough. Maybe I was, always dreaming too big. My last name is Welter, and maybe that's God's irony because I'm not even heavy enough for my own weight class. So I've been punching above my weight my whole life. And I took a real job. Thought I'm going to go into the business world. This is what I'm meant to do. And yet something was still missing, right? I was good at my job. I was making good money, doing all these things. And I remember telling my mom, I felt like I was dying a little bit each day because there had to be more in this world for me. There had to be something more that I was meant to do. And I was playing flag football on weekends, teaching aerobics before and after work. And the general manager of a team called the Mass Mutiny called the flag league and said, is there anybody in your league who you think could play tackle? Well, full disclosure, having come from rugby, I never really got the flag thing. I was probably still always tackling. So they said, please take her. Get her out of here. She needs to be tackling. She already does. So I got an open tryout to the Mass Mutiny, to a sport that I had loved from afar my whole life. And now it was going to be up close and personal. And I personally had an opportunity to play the sport of my dreams. And maybe it was too close. I got scared. I started wondering, what would I do if they told me I was too little again? What would I do if I got so close to this sport I'd always wanted to have an opportunity in, and I wasn't enough? And I remember thinking that maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I should just, always think I could have played football. And what I ended up realizing is I could live with being told I was too small. I'd heard that my whole life. But what I couldn't live with was wondering for the rest of my life, what would have happened if I would have just tried out for that football team? And I say that to you all as somebody who's made history several times, as somebody who went on to win championships and to play for the first and second US national team and to do a whole lot of things that I never could have even dreamed possible at that moment because they didn't exist. And yet me, just like anybody else, I could have been wondering, gosh, I wonder what my life would have been like if I would have just. And so anytime you get to that point, anytime you feel like you're not enough, anytime that you feel like you fear rejection or you don't know what the outcome is going to be, do what I did and realize that hearing no or not being enough, that's okay. You can live with it. You can regroup. You can find something better. You can go lift weights. You can control what you can control. But what you don't want to do is live the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if. Because I can tell you what, I sure wouldn't be here talking today with all of you if I would not have had the courage to go that day. You know, football is an interesting sport. People always ask me, how did you never quit? How did you get back up after getting knocked down so many times? And I kind of stop and I think, that's the game. It's not a question of if you'll get hit, it's when. And the truth is that then it's not about whether or not you'll get back up. It's how you get back up. And when you get back up, do it with attitude because the opponents are watching. Because you can't just lay down on the field and give up and surrender. You've got to get up and make the next play. So it's always been a matter of finding the best ways to make the next plays. And those plays weren't even ones I could predict. Remember, I told you the reverse goal setting. The goal setting didn't work in my life. But what did was the mentality of stepping up to each challenge the game put in my way. If you don't have an ultimate goal, then how do you keep moving? The way you keep moving is you keep showing up every day and stepping up to every challenge the game puts in your way. And that was my philosophy, very simply. Do work every day. Find a way to make plays even when it is certainly far from equal pay for equal work for women in sports, particularly the sport of football, in which I still remember the first check I ever got for playing women's pro football. It was after the 2004 season. We had won our first championship, our first Super Bowl, and we got a ring and a check for $12. Literally, it was $1 a game. And yet, that check is still one of the most important checks I've ever gotten to this day. It's actually a check that is currently housed in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because it was the difference between playing for free and becoming a pro. Now I say pro because at $1 a game, we couldn't afford all those letters. We could not afford the professional, but it was a start. And that was before photo deposit. That was before you could cash it and keep it. So that was actually a conscious choice, right? We had to cash it or keep it. And I kept it because I knew what I was doing it for. I wasn't doing it with the promise of a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I believed that we were all, every one of us believed that if in the final frontier for women in sports, in the sport that has taken over Thanksgiving and made it a conscious choice that you either watched the game or you were in the kitchen cooking, that's a personal affront to me every time one of those guys makes a comment or a troll makes a comment of getting back in the kitchen, right? That is one of the most common insults we hear as women in sports. Oh, you can't do that. Go make me a sandwich. And I think about it and I'm like, I think that dichotomy started in the game that I made history in because it was a choice of where you spent Thanksgiving. And it never made sense to me And it still doesn't, which is probably why, there are a lot of people who think there is nothing I can't do. And I have to kind of look at them and be like, well, actually, that's not true. I can't cook. It's probably still a mental barrier to this day, right? Because of the way it has been separated in our society. And I look at that sport and I think this is America's game. And yet it is the one sport that does not have parity at any level from peewees to the pros. And so I always thought, if this is the game we're not supposed to play, if this is the thing that we're not supposed to do, then when we do this as women, when we take this game and do it the right way, and when we play it well, can't we not only change the sport? Can't we not only change the culture around the sport, but can't we change culture through this sport? And I still look at that every single day. I did not set out to play men's pro football. In fact, if you would have asked me throughout my entire career, I answered that question many times. And I said, I am 5'2", 130 pounds. I would never play football against men. I'm not crazy. Well, apparently God doesn't like never. And certainly I am my own brand of crazy, because what happened was a team called the Texas Revolution asked me to go through a day of training camp with their guys. Smile for the camera, take some pictures, get you guys some good pub. Yeah, Jen, that'd be great. Absolutely not. That's an insult to me as someone who just won my second gold medal. And if I was any one of the guys on your team, I would absolutely hate it. If I'm going to do anything with you and your football team, either I do everything they do step for step, hit for all of training camp, or I do nothing at all. And boy, oh boy, those moments where the words come out of your mouth and then you catch up to them in your mind. Oh, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, I had just changed the course of not only my destiny, but the course of football. Because I was going to play pro football against men, because I was going to do it the right way, because I would not let them use me as a publicity stunt or a token woman. And then I also might have just gotten myself killed. I did not set out to do it, but the way the world evolved and the promise I had made to step up to every challenge, it gave me no other choice. And we as women, a lot of the times, will not see ourselves going up to that highest level, but we also don't quit. We may not project ourselves into changing history, but we also won't back down. And that is often the strength of women. It is humble, but it is stronger than even we know. And that has certainly been what drove me in my career. I would step up and take hits from those guys every day. You know why? Because I was doing it on behalf of all of the women who I loved so very much, and who I knew we had been in the trenches, sacrificing so much, playing for $1 a game, that we were the best kept secret in sports, and we didn't need to be a secret anymore. That's why you would do it. And I tell you, and I focused on not the part that most people know of, the NFL, because you know what, that story's been well told, but it's what made me that person that makes so many of us. It's the work done in the dark. It is the work that people don't see. It's the strength that is fortified by the people that we love and the care that we put into doing things that other people simply would not put the same value on. We did it for all of the women who had been told that they couldn't do something because they were a woman. And that was what drove me to step into the world of men's pro football. And I'll tell you what, nobody gave a damn about me, even when I was one of the best women's players in the world with 2 gold medals representing the USA in America's game. No one cared. No one knew. It took me literally being willing to get tackled by men to change the game for women. And it was the relationships that I formed with those players on that team that actually caught the attention of the head coach the next year, who said, "Who is this girl that all my guys love?" And they said, "Coach, that's your running back." And he sat me down and he grilled me on football. And at the end of the conversation the next day, he said, "You have to coach my football team." And I said, "No." He said, "What do you mean, no?" I said, no, women don't coach football. And then, I've never coached football. And you want me to coach men's pro football? Like, no, I'm not doing it. And Wendell said, "Not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job." And I said, "No." And I hung up on him. And the next day he called me back and told me about myself. He said, "Do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity and you were taking this job?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Good, I took it for you. You're coaching for me. And by the way, you can't quit. Otherwise, the narrative surrounding women coaching in men's pro football will be, we had a girl once and she quit." And I'm going to end with that story before we transition to Q&A for this reason and this reason alone. Ladies, we often overcheck boxes before we will allow ourselves to go to the next level. We will talk ourselves out of the places and spaces that we belong in because we feel like we have to have not only all the answers, but be perfect and perfectly ready for every new challenge. Guys don't do that. And I lovingly say that Wendell drop kicked me into success because he saw something in me before I even saw it in myself. So ladies, be bold. Don't be afraid to go after something, even if you have not been able to see someone who looks like you doing it. And for the guys out there, don't be afraid to see something in someone else, in those women around you, before she even sees it in herself. Thank you.
Awesome. Giving you a virtual clap. Dr. Jen, inspiring goosebumps. And I'm sure those that are in attendance also are feeling inspired and motivated on this morning. Such a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us for the Women's Empowerment Summit here. Produced and presented by Henry County Chamber of Commerce. I'm Shana Thornton, and we're back with a Q&A session. I would like to remind you that this is your time to get questions and concerns and feedback in with this top headline speaker, Dr. Jen Welter. Dr. Jen, when you were speaking, you described about getting knocked down, and you said it's not a matter of when, you know it's going to happen and you just have to get back up. And I just visualize thinking that's life, right? Life happens, and we know there are going to be dynamics that go up and down, but we have to stay strong. That leads us to the first question. Where do you see the future of football in terms of women and the impact we have on it long term, dealing with everything that women and working professionals deal with from day to day?
Well, first of all, for all of us in business, we have to realize that the business of sports is also the business of women, okay? If you didn't know this, okay, and I did a lot of talks on this yesterday because it was Equal Pay Day, 4% of sports media coverage goes to women in sports, 4%. 0.4% of sponsorship dollars go to women in sports. So in one of the most visible platforms, right? In one of the places and spaces where we see, the human spirit and competition play out in real time, in real ways. In one of the only places I can think of where, other than Halloween or a masquerade ball, that people are championed and actually celebrated for face paint and insanity, because we get to leave ourselves for a little bit and live through the worlds of others. We have yet to appreciate women at their highest competitive level in anywhere close to the way that we celebrate men. Now, why is that important? Because if you ask C-suite executives, Most of those women who are in the C-suite say, I played sports. I got my love for competition through sports. I got confidence through sports. And yet, what are we showing our daughters when they see 96% of the coverage go to men, or 99.6% of the dollars go to the men in sports? Can we really tell them that they are just as important competing in sports when we're showing them everything else? Kids are smart. They don't fall for that. Now, half of girls will opt out of sports by the time they finish puberty. And when asked, 7 out of 10 girls said, society doesn't support me in sports. 7 out of 10 said that they didn't feel like they belonged in sports. And 7 out of 10 said there are not enough visible female role models in sports. So we all play a role in changing those dynamics. Now, depending on who you ask, some people say it's 70% of the purchasing power lies with women. Some say it's up to 87%. You all know who controls the purse strings. So that means, ladies, let's put our dollars where our passions are and invest in businesses that are investing in women, invest in companies that are backing women, put our dollars to the change that we want to see in society, not just in football, but in all areas.
Yeah. So true. You mentioned celebration of men, and it doesn't quite always match up with the celebration of women. Let's talk about self-value and self-worth, right? There are many points in the lives of women, and sometimes when they're younger, they want to be accepted and want to be celebrated as much, which is important. But what would you say to that working professional woman watching us today who doesn't feel she's in an environment where she is valued and appreciated? How can she push through that?
Well, goodness, I mean, the first thing is, where do you feel value and where can you contribute? Okay. One of my good guy friends told me once, I was fighting a bad uphill battle in football. And he said, Jen, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated.
Wow.
Okay. Because those are very different things. Okay. And we all know that at times people will say, oh yes, well, we have gender diversity or we have racial diversity, and they'll throw it up on a poster if you let them. And yet what matters with diversity and inclusion is not that just that you have someone there, but are they included in the conversations? Are their vantage points heard? Is your voice a part of changing the dynamic? Because just having me in the room, that's not enough. You need to know that, hey, this impacts women differently, or this is not acceptable, or culturally, this is not okay, right? We have to be in those places. And what's really hard for all of us as we make choices on where we are going to invest our time and energy is, what is the ROI going to be in your life? And if you find yourself in a place, in a space where truly you are not allowed to be your best self, then my advice is parallel. Always do the best where you're at, but always realize that there are other things for you. And abusive situations, whether it's in a relationship or in society or in business, part of the way that they maintain the status quo is by breaking you down and not championing you to find your voice and to find your best self. And if you have people around you, or you are in a position where those dynamics are at play, I would say create your game plan. Maybe that means going back to school or whatever it is, but create your game plan so you are not reliant on a place or a space that will not allow you to reach the heights that you are capable of.
Yeah, of course, there are many facets of business that are celebrated, but there are lots of women on with us today that are entrepreneurs as well. So they've created their own place, and we're here to celebrate all the success and achievements of women. Very rare do you have the opportunity to sit exclusively with the first female coach of the National Football League. Ladies, you have that opportunity. We're encouraging you right now in the chat, in the Q&A. Please get your questions in and your feedback, and Dr. Jen will take them on one-on-one. So get them in for us because we're on limited time. I have a question for you. Before you became the first female coach in the NFL, you were the first female to play in a skilled position as well. And you mentioned that in your testimony and presentation. You were clearly on a very male-dominated team. What was it like mentally and physically to play with a lot of men or males that were clearly twice your size? What was that like?
Well, honestly, most of the women were twice my size too. So, I think what's important is the game is the game. And how you play it or where you fit in it changes, right? The guys were bigger, faster, stronger. That is true. But what they needed to know was two things. They needed to know, one, that I belonged. I was there for the right reasons.
Okay.
Right? I couldn't say, you can't hit me, I'm a girl. That was the job description, right? Like, I'm a running back. That is the job description. I'm going to get hit every play, particularly in indoor, because there is no such thing as running out of bounds, right? Because it's basically, if you don't know, it's in like a hockey arena. So there's no out of bounds, which means running back's going to get hit every play. And I couldn't expect the rules to be different for me, because then that's not respecting the game, right? Then that means I wasn't out there for the same reason. So they needed to know that, number one. Number two, they needed to know that we could get along, right? That there were going to be moments, but that I would give it as well as I would take it, meaning that we could laugh and we could joke. And I think once we got those two things locked in, we really became better together, right? I learned so much in that situation. I was used to being the enforcer, right? Like one of the, the baddies, right? Like one of the players that people feared internationally.
Yes.
And now I'm on a men's team and I am scratching and clawing and fighting to, hold on to the bottom rung, right? And to bring value. And those guys made me better, because one of the things they taught me is, Jen, it can't be you versus us. It has to be us versus the world. And they really taught me how to be a great teammate as opposed to somebody who was an outsider on their team. And I think that was something that I really still cherish. And I laugh often with women and I say, don't worry about it. I speak dude, right? Like, I speak dude. Do you need me to translate? And I definitely translate for the guys on where they would get themselves in trouble with like their wives and their girlfriends. And that made me a very, very, very valuable asset. They'd be like, oh, she knows. Hey, coach, come here. You got a minute? What? Yeah, what's up? Coach, my wife is so mad at me and I don't even know what I did. And I'd be like, okay, what did you do? Well, coach, I said this. Okay, she heard this. But coach, why did she hear that when I said this? Baby, I don't have time to explain all of that. Do you want me to tell you what you need to do to fix it? Yes, coach. And I'll tell you what, ladies, when you can coach them on that, and then you need to coach them on something else, they will always listen. It was very, very easy to change a football technique when they trusted you and loved you enough to bring you into their life.
Wow. So you're really emphasizing the importance of rapport and relationship building, right? I mean, so I would imagine over your career and your personal and professional life, that's something you would encourage all of us to really pursue.
Absolutely. The best and most valuable thing that we have in our lives are the people, right? Any business, I don't care what it is, that's your human capital, right? It doesn't run without the people who make it run. And I think, in football particularly, we see it a lot. People forget that those players are very real people, right? I said earlier, they look like superheroes. So sometimes we expect them to be them. And yet people have ups and downs in life.
Yes.
And what makes a big difference is when you treat them like humans, even in the roughest, toughest sport in the game. So empathy is one of the most powerful leadership traits that any one of us can possess and that we have to work on and develop.
Yeah. And it's acknowledging that people matter and everyone deserves the right to be seen and heard. So key. You are witnessing and experiencing an amazing 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. And we're having a great conversation back and forth with the one and only Dr. Jen. Of course, she's the first female coach in the NFL. And we want you to put your questions and feedback in. We have a great question from the live chat, Dr. Jen. Who was your role model? Did you have one?
No, honestly. You know, I didn't have one person that I said I want to be her. And so for me, that's really important to give girls.
Okay.
That's why I founded Gridiron Girls. Because knowing how I didn't have that person to look to, I also challenged myself to push to be that person. And I think I know that, for example, you know, we talked about resilience and getting back up and how do you keep going? On the days when I'm not sure what to do, or I might not feel like I have the strength, I think about all the young girls, right? Who are the next generation and who, you know, some of them like Kaylee, who is in the Boston area. She came to her first Gridiron Girls camp when she was like 4.5.
Wow.
Okay? She is 8 now. Now, we normally say that you can't, you know, that our minimum age is 6. So you do the math on that one. I remember her mom wanting her to go. And I said, Mom, that's your call. I'm not checking birth certificates. But I think she told me she was about 5 then. Now we're rewinding the clock. And I'm like, Mom, how did that work? And she just kind of looks at me. But Kaylee is a boss. She is out on that field tearing it up. And she's like, I'm a football player. She is in the gym. She's doing agility, ladder drills. She has her besties on. Another girl named Touchdown Girl Jazz, whose dad reached out to me and said, my daughter just so badly wants to be a Gridiron Girl, right? And to me, Gridiron Girls had always been the girls that I had on the field in the camps, right? And I was like, how do I do that? And I was like, well, I can send her a shirt. And he's like, oh my gosh, she would make her life. And Kaylee and Jazz had never met in person. They connected through Gridiron Girls. And now they're like best friends, both off the field and on. And those girls give me life, right? And I think we all need those places and spaces that we find it.
Yeah, that is so true. And for you to reach back and help as well. We have a great question coming from our live chat. And we did talk about celebrating women and having value. And this particular question says, but how do you mentally handle the knowledge of less than equal pay? Finances matter, right? To be able to take care of your household and keep putting in your all. And I know in your presentation, you mentioned you just have to do it. You have to show up. But you know, for many working professional women, that's easier said than done when you're saying, okay, not only am I not being respected or listened to on the job and others are getting credited with my ideas perhaps, but now I look at the paycheck every week and I'm not able to make it.
It's one day at a time. And I think talking about it is a big part of it. Let's use the NCAA, for example. Okay. Where we have, as I said, with what was going on, I said, they put the madness in March Madness. And yet those of us who have been in women's sports and we saw the disparity that the women's basketball team was experiencing versus the men, I was not surprised. That's the scary part. I've seen it. I've experienced it. We all have. And so it was not shocking. But what was powerful is that it was being talked about and that those differences were brought to light and that through that conversation, it created activation, right? And then there's instigation to say that we can't let this go on because those of us who have suffered in silence, right? As women in sports and just kind of taken it on, we knew it. We have felt it, we have lived it. And yet when other people saw just the stark, visible example, they got mad and they said, well, how can this be? And so you need all the people who would see it and say, how could this be? In order to say, we're not going to let what has been always be, right? And that means we have to keep working. We have to keep shining. And women, we also have to be willing to say I instead of just we. And that is something that honestly is actually socialized from the time we are kids. I still remember research from my freshman year in college. This is how powerfully it hit my mind that girls are socialized to play games that have a we mentality, right? And that we did this, and they will actually be taught to switch games before they celebrate over each other, right? Like we don't see the girls with the end zone dances like in your face, look what I did. But boys do. And boys are celebrated for that. Now, why am I talking about how kids play? I'm talking about how kids play because what they found is that plays out in corporate culture where women continue to say we and guys continue to listen for I. Because guys have been taught to speak in I. And so if you did work, you say I, whereas women will literally we themselves to death. And so we need to learn to put the I in the equation. So not to minimize other people, but also to balance that with highlighting yourself so that people have the ability to see what you did, because that is important.
Yeah. It is certainly important. And I think it emphasizes, as you pointed out, for when you work with the Gridiron Girls, your group and your program for these young women, to see women taking different paths as well, for them to become comfortable with that as well, and be as secure and confident as possible when they get in those leadership positions to help and influence and inspire. Ms. Rosa has a great question in our live Q&A, and you did mention your program working with young women as well. But can you particularly mention what you're doing or your interaction that or engagement you're having with other women, your peers, perhaps, not just in the world of sports, but other arenas as well in terms of inspiring and motivating each other?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I spend, I lovingly say that's the common thread is I want to uplift, inspire, and help empower whoever that is, right? Sometimes it's guys and making them better. Sometimes it's the young girls. And a lot of the times it's women. Now, women, interestingly, ladies, especially those of you watching, when I first got out of the NFL, women were not my biggest supporters.
Wow.
Because so many women felt like that football was a place and a space that they weren't invited into and that they couldn't relate to. It took about 2 years of really being open and sharing the common ground, right? That wasn't X's and O's, that were the life challenges and journeys that kind of got me to my field of dreams and developed that commonality. So it really took a while for women to see that we were more alike than we were different. It was actually football fans, guy football fans, ages 25 to 55, that found me the most relatable at first. And now that has shifted, but it was interesting because when my PR numbers were pulled early, it was young girls and it was males ages 25 to 55 who most related. And it's taken me really telling stories like today where, yeah, I did it on the football field, but could y'all say anything about football from that journey other than tackling? No. And we all tackle things. It just may not be on the football field.
Right.
But it took being intentional to show how much we are alike in order to really be able to have that conversation. And I loved hearing that actually from a woman I did a keynote for. It was like my first giant keynote, right? Yeah. Thousands of people in this huge conference building, right? And I got off the stage and I had 2 standing ovations. And this woman comes up to me and she's like, oh my gosh, you spoke to my spirit. And she had like tears in her eyes. And I was like, oh man, I'm like, thank you so much. And she's like, and I didn't expect it. And I went, huh? And she said, yeah, I was actually mad that you were our keynote speaker. Okay. And she said, I heard it. And I said, what is some football coach going to have to tell to me as a woman in business? And I said, okay. And she said, but as I listened to you, I realized you weren't talking about football at all. And she's like, I found myself just hearing you speak to me in so many of your journeys, but I never imagined that we would be so much alike. Yeah. And, you know, I think that society does a good job of finding ways to separate us. And yet I say all the time, when we're divided, we are easily conquered because we are taken from a position where we can find strength in each other and pitted as competition with each other.
And you're right. And we have to realize that we have more in common than not. And the bond of resiliency is certainly there. What a great conversation. You are certainly inspiring and motivating us and educating us as well about your unique journey, of course, as being the first female coach in the NFL. Now, as you may recall, you know, I'm sure better than I do, at the beginning of the 2020 NFL season, there was a regular season game between Washington and Cleveland Browns, where there were 3 females on the gridiron serving in official capacity. This was history making. You know that. It went down in the books. Do you see this as a game changer?
No, I see it as a necessary step in progress, right? We had in 2015, that was a game changer. Okay. With Sarah Thomas and I shook hands on the sideline. So her first game was my first game.
Yes.
Okay. And that handshake between a ref and a coach was the first time in the history of the National Football League that a ref and a coach shook hands, and it was 2 women.
Wow.
And we thought of it as a promise that there would be more women. So it's a logical progression that you should get another woman on the sidelines of the other side, right? So yes, it is history making, but I don't think of it as, not being what we should expect to see at this point, right? We're talking 6 years later to add 1 more woman to the equation.
Wow.
Right? So yes, it's important. And I love all of those women and I am glad to see it. Yes. Right? But what we need to do at some point is realize that what's powerful is not all of these first moments, but knowing that we have seconds and thirds and fourths and fifths, and that this is a new normal, right? First is important because we have to see it as different, right? And the journey of first is tough and not everybody wants it, right? But at what point do we start saying like, this is what it should be?
Yes.
Right? Sarah Thomas was there with me. Okay, now we have 2 coaches. So that should be the case. Not at 6 years later, we're saying, oh my gosh, look how much progress we've made, right? So it is important and it is vitally important, but it was also not the only time this season that you had more than 1 woman on the field. So let's start realizing that there is strength in consistent change. I told somebody the other day that sometimes I wish I was 3rd.
Wow. How come?
You know why? Yeah, because the first is divisive in nature. You are the person who is rocking the boat of the status quo. You have literally changed everything. Yours is the face of change.
Yes.
Right? I literally had somebody tell me once that mine was the face of change, which also meant it was the face of nightmares to those who did not want change.
Wow.
So the first is always controversial. Now, the second, unfortunately, is often in the shadow of the first, right? And, they'll be compared to the first. They'll there's that. And because there's, then there's only 2 data points at that point too, right? So if women have been taught that we need a seat at the table, which already says that there's only room for one, right? Women, we get a seat at the table. How big is this table? And why is it only a seat? Okay. But if you have first and second, then that's what that means. Is the second taking the seat from the first? Are they inherently at competition? And a lot of the times, yes, that's what's pitted. But the third is out of the shadow of the first. And she probably actually just gets to do work, right? She gets to go in and it's no longer controversial. People have started to realize that this is accepted. There's more power in the third. It's not just an exception to the rule. It's starting to establish a new rule, right? And one that is more inclusive. So, being the first is hard every day, right? And there is a weight on your shoulders every day. But I think by the time you're the third, you're not necessarily having to always have that mantle of being an instigator of change. You actually just get to do the job.
Yeah, I will say I appreciate everyone that comes through that door. And it reminds us of something said earlier, that leave the door wide enough for others to come through, and your contributions and your legacy is so amazing, Dr. Jen. Truly, we are pressed for time, but thank you so much. Great feedback coming from our live chat as well, and Q&A saying you are really inspiring them today. They're giving you virtual claps as well. Before you get out of here, we have to ask, and you've shared so much already, but if you could give us just a summary really quick, what would you say to the working professional woman that's watching you right now, and she's got a lot on her plate, and you show resiliency, you demonstrate and you epitomize courage on so many levels, but maybe she's questioning herself in some areas. Maybe she has not seen quite the success you have seen, but she visualizes a better life, a better career at some point. What would you say to her, Dr. Jen?
I would say, first of all, you, baby girl, need to be as good to yourself as you probably are to everyone else in your life, right? Women, we are expected to be all things to all people at all times, while also keeping our family fed, our face, our war paint on perfect, and doing it walking up a hill backwards, wearing high heels, and likely carrying the weight of the world on this shoulder and the ideas of yourself on this one, right? Like we are so hard on ourselves. And yet we are also often the people who are the soft place to land for everyone else. So if you are being hard on yourself, my first thing is you need to find a way to be a little better to yourself. And I challenge myself with that every day, because there is no harsher critic of me than me. Trust me. Okay. Because I always feel like I am capable of so much more, which that then makes it feel like you're never enough, right? So we have to do better in terms of allowing ourselves to be happy with the process. It's not just an outcome. This is your everyday life. And no, guess what? They say patience is a virtue. Well, clearly, ladies, I am not that virtuous, because I want more, and I want it now, and I want it for every single one of you. And I want it for myself, and I want it for the world. And I look at these things, and sometimes it's like, and the higher you go, the more you see that needs to be done, right? There are so many times in my career I've thought like, okay, maybe this is it. And then I go, oh, that's a thing too, right? Even publishing my book, it got turned down by every publisher. And they said, women in football doesn't sell. And I said, pretty sure I was the first. So how many times have you tried? And yet what I found is the first, you're then the first, and you're then the first. And you often feel early, which means you feel crazy because you see something that no one else has yet come around to, or they might have, but you don't know them, and they might be seeing the same thing somewhere else, but y'all don't know each other, or you haven't gotten to talk about it, and you might be fighting parallel battles. So we have to fortify ourselves. And that means, ladies, you are not meant to be perfect. Perfect is intimidating. It is momentarily attainable at best. Like, Shayna, your hair looks great today. If you walked outside in a hurricane, it is gone in a moment. So you better have taken a snapshot of that perfection, because it's not lasting. So we are so hard on ourselves with these ideals of perfection, and yet they are not realistic minute to minute. So fortify yourselves with the people who will build into you and not judge you for having a bad day. They will help you find a way to feel better about yourself, to find a way to getting you to the next level of your life, of your career, up to whatever it is. But fortify yourself. And ladies, do that for each other. Find a circle of trust, inspiration, motivation, where you say, you know what? Okay, we want to go to the gym. We're going to go together. We want to up our business game. We're going to learn together, right? Because we are meant to have a team and a tribe and a sisterhood. So if you feel like you don't have it in and of yourself, allow yourself the gift of bringing people in close enough. Because I used to think that true strength was never admitting weakness, and it's not. That's some BS they wrote or they probably put in a football movie somewhere. But true strength is actually admitting where you are in the world to empower others through your struggle, and to find new levels of strength that you have to crack through that idea of perfection in order to get there.
Wow. Finding new levels of strength. We're going to end on that. So many great nuggets, so much great wisdom, inspiration. I know many of you ladies, as I am, are just goosebumps and just so excited to really take on the world and remain driven. Dr. Jen Welter, what a pleasure to have you really headlining this amazing 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. So much there for the entire day. And I thank you for all that you do, inspiring young women, young men, and seasoned women and men as well. Thank you so much. And Dodie, we'll go back to you.
Well, ladies, our program is coming to an end, but hopefully you paid attention today, and maybe you noticed some of the subtle changes in my attire. And if you did, maybe you're one of the lucky recipients of the gift cards we're giving away. I hope so. It's so exciting to give away something. But if you didn't catch on to that, hopefully you listened enough to learn and grow from our phenomenal speakers that we had on today's program. A huge thank you goes out to Miss Vanessa Harrison, Dr. Jen Welter, and Dr. Ivory Drayton. Thank you, ladies, for being a part of the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. I also want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the ladies that were a part of our breakout session. You ladies are such an inspiration in our community, and I thank you for being a part of today's program. And congratulations to our scholarship recipients. You ladies rock. You're great. We look to see you on our program in a few years sharing your wisdom with us. But today's program would not have been possible without our sponsors. Ladies, you've seen them scrolling on the screen. You've heard about them today. You've seen their commercials. We thank them so much for being part of the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit. So look them up, check them out, and give back to their businesses, because they've been able to give to you today by pouring into you with the wisdom of our speakers and being part of our program. And then thank you, ladies, for being a part of the program. We love having you with us for the 2021 Women's Empowerment Summit, and we look forward to seeing you again at the 2022 Women's Empowerment Summit. Thank you. Unplug from your computer and go out and conquer the world.